I am delighted that the filmmakers, Kathryn Ferguson, the director, and Eleanor Emptage, who is the producer, joined me for this chat because we've just shown the incredible film you've made, Nothing Compares, the Sinead O'Connor documentary, which I love. And we are now showing to our guest here this film, where I'm going to be talking to you about making the film, how you made it, all the background story as two women filmmakers, because it's a new time, I think, for women filmmakers generally. But let me start with, how did the idea come? And I didn't appreciate it, actually, that it started quite some years ago. So who came up with the idea first?
Well, it's a bit of a long-winded story. Hello, I'm Kathryn, the director, this is Ellie, the producer. Basically, I was introduced to Sinead through my father. Way back in the late 80s, he used to play The Lion and the Cobra on repeat as we drove around Belfast in the rain. And she became this like visceral soundtrack to my early childhood. And then in my early teens, I discovered her second album, as did my friends. And she became this like icon for me and my young female friends from Belfast, this icon from her own island. However, what happened in the early 90s was, as soon as we felt that we'd found her as someone to really look up to and hold on to, was when this horrendous backlash against her began in 1992. So it was very demoralizing for us as young women to witness this person that we admired so much being treated so terribly and so publicly. And I swear that's where the very early origins,
the seeds were planted.
The seeds were planted, honestly, for the film, because I just couldn't shake off this story. And I, of course, kept Sinead. I kept listening to her music in the decades that followed, and I was always that person at parties in the noughties, and so just constantly blasting.
And I met Sinead, I mentioned you, I met her in 95 or 94. Yes. And I put on this big event, What Women Want, in 95 at the South Bank, which she helped me on tremendously. And I guess that was just a little bit after all this had happened.
It would have been, a couple of years. So it was, I'm sure that was a very rough point for her, really.
Yeah.
In the mid-90s. But yeah, so basically I then became a filmmaker in my 20s. And I suppose, she just, as she was still with me and so vivid still in my life, because she'd never gone, it was just a story that's really, really stuck with me, and a story that I wanted to try and tell. And I went back and I did a master's degree. I did a film degree in 2011. And for my final project, I made a film called Mather, which is Irish for mother. And in that, I was starting to look a lot of the themes that we go into in Nothing Compares. So I very cheekily reached out to her then manager, Faulkner O'Kelly, and asked would there be any of Faulkner, if there's any way that I could get access to her stems of her music, because I wanted to deconstruct them for this short that I was making. And Faulkner amazingly agreed. So I got to use her music. I then sent them this short out of courtesy, not expecting them to look at it, but then got a call maybe a year later, 2 years later, asking if I would direct her music video for Fourth and Vine, which was in 2013. So I got to direct that music
I love
video.
that song. I love
Do you like
that
song?
I've seen her sing it live so many times.
Have you?
It.
It's a very joyous.
I must have seen your video as well.
It's black and white and very Irish.
Makes me dance the minute I put it on. I'm like,
do you?
Yeah.
Oh, no, it's a beautiful, happy song. But I got to meet her. I got to finally meet her in 2013, which just stoked the fire further in me and reminded me.
And how did you find her? Because she either likes, in my personal experience of being friends with her over the years, she either likes you or she doesn't. So I guess I'm sure she loved you.
Well, who knows? But we worked well together, and we made something that we were both really happy with. And I was just delighted to meet her. And I met John, who John Reynolds,
musical director,
ex-husband and best friend still to this day. And he and I got on extremely well. So then really, that was 2013. I then spent the next 5 years or so just talking about this desire to make a film about her, but not having the resources or knowledge or any example. I'd been making shorts throughout these years, and it wasn't until I met Ellie, who's here, the film's producer, and Michael Malley, the other's film producer, in early 2018, that I finally met, you know, this amazing team who were equally as passionate and willing to start developing.
So it's a real passion project for you. I can see that. And do you think to make a film, get it made from nothing, really does have to be a passion project? I guess, unless somebody comes and offers you millions to make a big blockbuster.
I think, sorry, Ellie, go on, because this is where Ellie got involved and made the whole thing happen. We would have been lost without her.
So how did you start with that, Ellie?
Well, I mean, the first thing, as you mentioned, we were an independent team, and we did have nothing. So I think, you know, I think it does have to be a passion project for that reason, because you are essentially just doing it off your own steam. It's not like it's a commission and someone hands you the budget. You have to build it from scratch. So the first thing we did was actually apply to the national funds. And the first application we did, I think, was for Northern Ireland Screen. And we were incredibly, you know, it was fantastic that we managed to get the support to develop the film from Northern Ireland Screen, Screen Ireland, and then later BFI Doc Society. So with those three, we sort of had the building blocks to kind of continue to research, to start sort of the archival research process, which obviously on a film like this is so key. So that was sort of how we began, and we took the film to a couple of big pitch forums where we sort of met. We had just meetings all day talking about the film, and I think as much as sort of making financial connections, more so it really helped for us sort of cement the story we wanted to tell, because you had people questioning the direction, and it sort of really helps kind of crystallize what we wanted.
And did anybody try and influence you on telling that story in perhaps a more negative way? Because Sinead had had so much negative press, unfair negative press, and I'm sure you would never have agreed to do it in a negative way. But did that come up at all, or people have gone beyond that, I hope, now?
I mean, over the course of the conversations, there were conversations with people that we didn't work with that sort of suggested that maybe, you know, we might want to go into certain areas.
Well, she has and admits to having had mental health issues over the years, and a lot of damage and a lot of pain. So I'm sure that did come up. But I'm glad. I mean, I found the film so positive. I also felt very emotional that it was financed by the Irish film industry, because that really does take Sinead on quite rightly as an icon of Ireland, and it's something she's fought so long for the rights of Irish women, and she's cared so much about it, whether it been the Magdalene laundry stories or the child abuse. I mean, I've been with her at different events where she would have people coming up to her with stories or thanking her for her support and what she would have the courage to talk about. I mean, she's had the most incredible courage over the years, don't you think, for what she's done? I don't know.
Unbelievable. And a lone wolf with very little support, you know, and I think that was, you know, that's so apparent in what happens in the film when you just see how brave she was, standing out in front of all those people and refusing to back down. Really astounding courage, I'd say. But I just wanted to jump in on the comment about Ireland, because what was so interesting when we began the research and development of Nothing Compares, we actually went back to Dublin and met with lots of writers and academics, just to kind of really test our thesis and make sure that it wasn't veering off in the wrong way. And what we found out during that process was that particularly the academics were saying that for the first time ever, Sinead has now been written into the history books as a figure of huge cultural importance, not like a pop star or not somebody who had a one-hit wonder. Like, she's been written in as a very significant cultural person in Ireland, and that was really fantastic to hear. And as well, when you do go to Dublin, it's still there today, and it was there 5-6 years ago when we were back there. There's now like a mural in Temple Bar in central Dublin of her face, and on it says, "Sinead, you were right, we were wrong, we are so sorry."
Oh my God, I have not seen or heard about that. I would be there in tears. It's about time I went back to Dublin to visit. That's beautiful, because she when I first met her, she was almost living as an outcast in London, and it was only when she went back to live in Dublin, I don't know when, in the last 15 years or so, that she sort of got back into society there. But and then she had her experiences, which isn't in the film, but I know it wasn't all good for her. When she lived in Los Angeles, she lived in the States and became part of the American entertainment scene, and again found the way that women were treated really horrific, and came back to England. And choosing what to write and then to include in the film must have been quite challenging, because there were so many different stories with Sinead, so much you could, I mean, how the film you were saying is 95 minutes long, but it could have been a lot longer, of course. There's so many things that happened.
Yeah, well, I just think from the very beginning, it was this story that we wanted to tell. And of course, as you say, there's many more. And I really hope there's 10 films made about Sinead, because she deserves it. But I suppose a key thing for us was trying to make sense of what happened in 1992, because it seems that the action on Saturday Night Live caused such confusion. And that, I think that was where everything kind of cracked in half, because people didn't understand why she did what she did.
When she tore up the picture of the Pope.
When she tore up the picture of the Pope, it just left people very bewildered, because of course she was a good 5 years ahead of, you know, the exposés of the abuse in the Catholic Church, and people just didn't understand it. So it was very easy then to dismiss it and dismiss her. And I suppose what our film is trying to do is show you how she got there and why she did what she did. It wasn't like a random act. It wasn't trying to be
controversial for the sake of it.
No, but that is how it was written off.
Yeah.
You know, everything she did was written off in that way. So I suppose for us to tell that story, we needed to go right back to the start, the origins of how she got to there. Because we really felt strongly, if you could explain that and the cause and effect and why that happened, then everything kind of post 1992 makes a lot more sense. But we needed to be able to spend the 95, 97 minutes of our film deep diving into that. To, you know, it's like the foundations of why everything has happened. So that was what our film was always really about, Ellie, wasn't it, from the get-go?
Yeah, I mean, I think you said the other day, Kathryn, it's really interesting now looking back at what our sort of initial proposals in 2018 and what the film that we wanted to tell, and actually how true the final film is to that intention. And I think that's something that we're probably all really proud of as a team, is that we didn't get blown off course. We sort of stayed true to what we'd set out to do with the film.
Yes. And have you seen, have you watched the film with Sinead? You know, she's presumably she's watched it. How does she feel about the film? Is she happy with it?
She's been amazingly supportive. As far as we're aware, she hasn't watched it.
Oh, she
hasn't? It was offered to her. No, she hasn't watched it. But I think the thinking was that it's probably not the most comfortable thing to sit through all of that a second time if you've lived through it the first time. But she's been amazingly supportive throughout the past year. So for that, we're hugely grateful.
That shouldn't amaze me that she hasn't watched it, but it does amaze me at the same time. But she's not had a very easy time. I know the last few years she lost one of her children in a very tragic way, and I haven't managed to speak to her. I haven't spoken to her. I'd love to go over and see her, actually. But then, of course, she had a little bit of a meltdown when she was in some hotel or hostel in America and sending out these calls for help on Facebook. That was about 4 or 5 years ago, wasn't it? And she got whipped up by some Hollywood guru, and she's not had an easy time at all the last few years. But she is performing again now, isn't she? Is she recording? It says at the end of the film that she's
there's an album, isn't there? There's an album that is due to launch hopefully this year, but not.
Yeah, but you haven't seen her personally in the last.
I haven't seen her. No.
I'm feeling very tempted to get myself over to Dublin. I mean, tracking her down, even when I used to see her quite regularly, she would be changing her telephone number on a weekly basis. It was
really?
Always, she was always like changing email addresses, changing phone numbers, and so on. But I've had some amazing, wonderful times with her. We went to Glastonbury Festival. I was her +1 at Glastonbury when she performed there backstage. That was great. And so many times I've been with her, apart from when she performed in What Women Want, and we had the fantastic quotes from Germaine Greer that Sinead uses on her Universal Mother album, which is still my favorite album. And then had Germaine on the stage live reading out those quotes she hadn't even known that Sinead had used, and that wonderful phrase that Sinead picked up on, the opposite of patriarchy is not matriarchy but fraternity, which I love, and I think was very much part of what was inspiring Sinead at that point. When she found those quotes in the BBC archives, that's what she told me. And that great album. And you finished the song with one of her songs, which always reduces me to tears, always. Thank You for Seeing Me. I don't even say it now, I start crying. And it was like all Sinead's music, it's such a cry from the heart. And Thank You for Seeing Me was the amount of times I would dance and play it and dance to it with my daughter, who's also a great Sinead fan. And, you know, the tears would come down, because I think for every woman, that's such an anthem, really. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for hearing me. Thank you for loving me. I mean, it's wonderful that you used it to finish the film off. I thought that was absolutely perfect. So I would really want to thank you as a major Sinead fan and groupie for making this film, because it needed to be made, and her story needs to be heard by women everywhere. I'm feeling really weepy now. It's not. I forget that over the years, truly, Sinead as a person, Sinead as a songwriter, as a performer, has been so important in my life. And I think in so many people's lives. And I was so privileged to work with her and be friends with her and hang out and see all sides and hear her stories. And you know, sometimes you do need to see something, even with somebody you were close with, see it as a film and really appreciate just how extraordinary she is. So thank you so much. And the film has received wonderful accolades. You've won awards. What were the awards that you won? The British film.
It's had a good run.
Yeah, it was the British Independent Film Award was the most recent, where it was the best documentary and then best debut director.
Oh, well done. Well, that's brilliant. And I the minute it came out, I was hearing some general vibes. Oh, this is something special. It may be up for an Academy Award. Sally didn't quite get there, but you should be there. I would have voted for you. So what next now? You're going on to quite different work now, I understand.
Yes, we're just Ellie and I are in the midst of our next film. It's all about Hollywood and the golden age of Hollywood, so quite different. But we are in the middle of that, and hopefully that will be out in a year or so, year and a half or so.
So long, don't they? They really
do. They certainly do. Yes. Wow. Well, this Nothing Compares took us 4 solid years before it saw the light of day. So it's that's documentary making for you.
Wow. Yes, I've got.
It's a commitment.
Somebody who watches it rather than makes documentaries yet. Yeah, you don't realise just how much work goes into that behind the scenes. It's enormous. But anyway, thank you again. I really applaud and congratulate you on making a wonderful, wonderful movie. And we've all enjoyed it tonight. And I will be spreading the word that everyone really has to watch it. It's going to be streamed. It's going to be hopefully on Sky Arts later, not in the quite soon. In fact, it's going to be.
I think within the next month.
Which will be wonderful, and it's
Now TV. I imagine as a partner of that.
Yeah, perfect. So it needs to get out to everybody to really recognise just what an extraordinary, courageous, brilliant performer, entertainer, and feminist in every way, an activist Sinead O'Connor is. So thank you very, very, very much.
Thank you, Lynn. Cheers.